My name's Carol Therese. I'm your presenter today. I'm a clinical social worker from Houston. I'm a birth mother. I was reunited with my son 3 years ago. I will be willing to tell you a little bit about myself and my experience if you're interested in that. What I really want to do today, we did this workshop yesterday, and one of the things I felt was really missing was myself not having a clear idea of what people really wanted to get out of this. So as we go around and introduce ourselves, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about yourself, your name, who you are, if you're a social worker, a psychotherapist, a birth mother, an adoptee, an adopted mother, and also if you would just make a statement about something that you would like to come away from this workshop with. I know I can't please everybody, but I'd like you to really go away with something that you want and that matters to you. So if you could just think a little bit about that as we're going around, and I'm going to even take some notes so we can make sure and cover the things people really want. So just start and go around this way.
I'm Rose Doust from Detroit, and I'm an adoptee who searched and was reunited with my birth mother a little over a year ago. My birth mother also was an adoptee, and I continued the search for her birth relatives. And it's something that she is having to come to terms with now because she never dealt with any adoption issues, and she's at this point 60. The post-reunion relationship is proceeding very slowly. The contact's been very positive, but there are just layers of problems with the various complications that we're having. And I had hoped to perhaps learn, maybe gain a deeper understanding of how this impacts birth, how reunion impacts birth families, and what my role would be throughout the early stages.
Okay. And how long has the reunion been?
A little over a year.
I'd like to take some notes, and it would really help if I had a pen. Does anybody have an extra one?
By the front door.
Thank you. Are you going to have one now?
There's a stack one by the door.
By the door. Oh,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Joan Atterbury, and I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I'm a birth mother, and I was reunited with my daughter, I think, it's been a year and a half ago, but she lives here in Chicago, and I live in Oregon, so it's been a slow relationship. I say that, slow and then very fast, and slow and very fast. I just got back from taking her up to her birth father's for 3 days, so we all stayed there together, so I am reeling. Yeah, real powerful. And then, let's see, what else did you want us to cover?
Well, just anything particular you'd like to get here today?
I guess, yes, it's more for me personally in terms of how to deal with a post-reunion relationship, how to also come from a dysfunctional family, so I don't have much experience dealing with relationships.
Okay.
So it's, and she comes from a very normal family and seems to be handling all of this
A
much
normal
better.
family?
Well,
I've never heard of one of those.
Yeah, I know, it's in the quotation marks, but she even says, we got the dog, 2 kids, the whole schmear, she even talks about it and joke about it, but seems to really have gotten a lot on dealing with relationships, and she's real straightforward about it. I'm sitting here just swimming. So,
Thank you.
My name is Russ Holzhauser. I'm co-therapist with Carol Therese in her practice, and I work with adolescents and families, and a lot of adopted families dealing with the issues of being an adopted child in families in that context. They generally don't get to the point. More normally, my context is when the families just start to deal with, well, do we get them in touch with their birth families and how the whole process goes on. And I'm technical advisor.
My name is Donna Portuesi, and I'm from Seattle, Washington. Birth mother in limbo, and she knows of me, but we've not made contact. And I think there's a lot of difficulty with the adopted family letting this happen, with her being on her own enough to make it out. I guess what I'd like to get out of this are maybe some ways to deal with being in limbo if there is such a way.
And probably maybe the lack of acceptance from the adopted family, or is
Oh,
that?
at this point, I don't care anymore. You know, I just-
That's an issue for me,
It
for
is?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't prepared for that.
Thank you.
I'm Paulette Warren from Toronto, Ontario. I'm an adoptee and birth mother. And the situation with my daughter, working with her about 2 years ago, was similar to Donna's. And I'd like to also deal with the legal situation. I found my birth mother about 5 years ago, and the situation is very rocky. Nothing's happening with it right now. I have five half siblings, and 2 years after that, I located another child that was given up for adoption, who is full sibling of the other 5. So I'm kind of the odd man out. Things with her are fine. She's here in Chicago. She'll be here later tonight. But the situation with the rest of the family, well, she's accepted, I'm not. So it's very hard on me. I don't know what to do about it. So I'd like some help to, how to help them.
I'm Iris Forshner. I'm a birth mother from New York. I had a reunion with my daughter last July. The reunion was arranged by the adoption agency. Everything seemed to have gone very well, although there was a lot of fear on my part that she would disappear. She said she's not going anyplace, and then the door was closed. She finally wrote a short note that she didn't think a relationship was beneficial for either of us, and she didn't want any contact. I'm finding it difficult dealing with that.
I can imagine.
I'm Kate Ross, a birth mother from Green Bay, Wisconsin, with a 24-year-old daughter. Searched, found, contacted, and met with hostile rejection to the point of the adopted family retaining an attorney, threatening me with a restraining order. So for 15 months, I've been in limbo as well.
So both of you have experienced rejection and loss.
Well, I'm sorry, but one of the things that was difficult for me was the fact that my daughter had gone to the agency 2 years prior, and when I had contacted them, I knew this. She's a social worker, and I guess I felt that she would be a little more understanding to how I was feeling, and obviously she's not able to deal with her feelings, you know.
I think, even with what I've heard so far, one of the things we'll do a little differently today is go through the stages, and maybe that'll give you more of a sense of how this can develop.
I'm Shelley Borgson from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm an adult adoptee who's been reunited, and I'm an adoptive parent. I run a search and support group, Adoption Information and Direction, the Eau Claire chapter, and I'm a social work senior finally, at University of Eau Claire. And I'm here basically because we have a lot of birth mothers in my particular group, and I think I do well in counseling as far as the search aspects of the stages, the ups and downs. But there's a lot of times that I wish I could relate better to the post-search experiences that they're going through. And although, I think I'm doing okay here and there are times that I wish I had a better knowledge base there.
You're an adoptee, an adopted mother, and do you have biological children at all?
Yes, I have one son that's biological.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Helgerson. I'm from the La Crosse, Wisconsin area. I'm an adopted mother. I helped my handicapped son with his search, and he's deaf. And we had a reunion at our home just in February with his birth mom the day before his birthday, his 21st birthday. And I've since had another reunion in her home where he was allowed to meet, all of us were invited, and we were allowed to meet his grandmother, aunts and uncles and cousins. I also am a support group leader in Wisconsin, the same as Shelley, concerned about the same issues. But for myself, I want to know what I can do for the rest of our lives to be there for her as a birth mom and for myself. So we don't blow anything that we started.
I want you to talk to my son's parents.
and the mothers.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Terry. I'm from St. Louis. I'm a mother that's been reunited with her son for 2 years. We started talking 3 years ago. He's lived with me part of the time, and things have been a roller coaster, but they're kind of on a level keel right now.
And anything special you're looking for?
Just learning more what's going to
What to expect in development post-reunion?
Fran Knowlton. I was reunited with my son 2 years ago. He moved in with us 2 months after we were reunited, and things have gone progressively downhill ever since. And I just want some help in dealing with it.
He moved in with you? How did that come about?
He was from a dysfunctional family, alcoholic father that was dead by the time he was 5. So he was raised without a father after all. But his mother remarried, and it lasted about a year. He was an alcoholic too. He's just ruined emotionally and damaged for life, I think.
So one of the
It's been a
things...
real blow to me.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard from birth parents, and I think we were all kind of duped in some ways 20-some-odd years ago, but we expected that these kids were going to have 2 loving parents and a good
Yes.
home, and that...
The only reason we gave him.
Exactly, and that these parents were going to do better than we could. And then instead, we get situations like this.
Slap in the face.
It really is.
Sacrifice you.
Thank you.
I'm Bobby Moskowitz. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a birth mother. My son found me when he was 18 years old in 1980. We're going to have our 10th reunion anniversary this summer.
Wow.
He's 28 now. He's coming in tonight from Tucson, Arizona. He's going to spend the weekend. It's been a long 10 years. Hang in there, every one of you. I mean, 10 years ago, I might have been sitting there and saying the same thing that these ladies were saying, but I pursued it.
And how are the adopted parents?
Wonderful.
Fine.
Yeah, they're fine. But we didn't see each other for the first 5 years after we met.
The adopted parents?
No, my son and I. He lived in California. I lived in Maryland.
So you talked on the phone, had no physical contact? for
We
5 years?
met in 1980. We did not see each other again until 1985.
Wow.
And as he has gotten older, it has gotten, I'd say in the past 2 years, it's finally starting to get better.
Well, can't you just tell them to come back after we've done whatever they need to do?
Yeah, right.
Spare yourself right between years.
Exactly. Let them do what they have to do. Let them go and do what they have to do. They'll be back. He even, but with me, what I want to say now is what I'm feeling is that, like for the past 2 years, it's the first time I've gotten Mother's Day cards. And there are these cards that say, to my other mother. And I'm selfish, and I'm thinking, why can't they say, to my mother? So it's never enough.
It's never
No matter
enough.
what it is, it's never enough. And that's where I am now,
My son calls his mother his other mother when he's around me, but when he's around her, he doesn't call me anything because they don't. I don't exist.
I mean, I wouldn't dare let him know, that I have those thoughts. But, I mean, I should be very happy. And I'm thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice to get a card that said, to my mother, And that's,
Have you had your first fight?
beg your pardon?
Have you had your first fight?
Never.
They say the turning point, they say, whoever they are, this is all new. If you'll notice in the blurb about this workshop, it said it was experimental. It was meant to read experiential, but it really is experimental.
He lives in Arizona and I live in Ohio now, so we don't see each other that much, maybe once or twice a year. And there's nothing for us to fight about. I mean, we had a wonderful, he just admitted something to me that he's been seeing a therapist for some other problem, and he talks to her about this friendship that he has with me, and she says, oh, come on, what do you mean friendship? This is your biological mother, So I think he's trying to come around.
A lot of kids do see it that way, though. Particularly the younger we were when we gave birth, and then when parents adopt, they're generally a little older because they've tried to have children of their own, and they can't look at the difference between my son and myself is 17 years. My son's parents are almost as old as my parents, and he can't look at me and think of me as a mother. So it's difficult for them, and I will probably have to be satisfied with friendship. Although he knows I'm his mother, we look just alike. Thank you.
My name is Jane McElvain. I'm from Pittman, New Jersey. I'm a birth mother. The adoption agency found my son before I did, but I continued on until I found out where he lived. And right now, he doesn't want any contact.
That must be very painful. Have you had any contact at all, letters?
Only with the adoptive parents. They felt bad that he wouldn't respond, so they wrote to me a couple letters. We exchanged letters back and forth using the agency as the intermediary. And I thought he was well aware of it, but he wasn't. When he found out that his adoptive parents were writing to me, he got very angry and has forbidden them to have any contact with me at all. So,
A lot of
he's
rejection.
young. He's 19. He'll be 20 this summer.
That may change as he gets a little more mature. I've heard one thing that seems to happen with these kids is when they have their own children, they start getting really interested.
I think it'll eventually come around. My problem is dealing with this in between.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Painful rejection, all the abandonment stuff all over.
My name is Rhonda Shoemaker. I'm from Missouri. I didn't search, but we found each other. They didn't search, but they found me. My son just turned 12.
Would you run into each other tomorrow?
No, he was in Dallas, Texas, and we started communicating. I didn't know anything about him for about 10 years. I knew a little bit about him, and I had a picture of him. He was 6 years old. But I had my second son, my second full-blooded son. Father and I married, and we had a little baby. He just turned 2, and after we had him, it really hit me again. Other things hit me. And through trying to find out about Troy, I went to the agency. We started writing. His parents are very receptive. They're beautiful people. She's the most wonderful woman I've ever met in my life. We just spent a week with them in February, and they're coming next week to spend a couple weeks with us. And it's just too perfect.
Perfect.
He's a perfect child, has a perfect life. And I'm wondering, is there a bomb going to drop on me at any moment?
Well, I think that's why it's important that we go through some of the stages today. You're in the honeymoon stage, and there are some other stages that are kind of disappointing, but that doesn't mean that the relationship ends necessarily.
But I'm afraid any little blow will be a bomb to me because it has gone too smoothly. Where some people search for 5 to 10 years, I didn't even search. I just wanted information because I felt he was too young to search for. He's only 12 years old.
Oh, he's only 12 years old.
He's only 12. Just turned 12.
How was he taking it?
Wonderfully. He became very curious about me when he was 10 and started a photo album about himself. And that was what they sent me the first letter. With the first letter, he sent me this photo album. It's got a picture of him about every day of his life. She sent a letter and told me when he first coughed, crawled, picked his nose, everything. So I feel so very lucky, so very confused too. I think.
I can see where you
can't
feel
believe it.
scared. It's a wonderful reunion, and
It
you
is.
wonder.
I wouldn't want it any differently, and I feel a little guilty sometimes having this, hearing other, problems that kind of bothers me.
There's a lot of fear attached to it, but most of these relationships continue, even the ones that I've run into where people lose contact for years, pick up somewhere along the line. So it's a lot of it's optimistic. No guarantees, of course, but it's real scary.
I'm Joan DeGroot. I'm from Everett, Washington. When my daughter was 20, she was contacted by an intermediary, or the adoptive parents were contacted. And they said, don't ever call here again. So Washington State law, you have to wait until the adoptee is 25, and then the adoptee can be contacted directly.
25, never heard of that.
So she'll be 25 June 3rd, 1960, or 65 is her birthday. Next week, she can be contacted directly. So I'm going to face, I think, dealing with some very overprotective, pessimistic adoptive parents. So
Absolutely.
I'm just going to try to take it as it comes.
Walk on eggshells,
Please.
kind of scared, excited about getting to actually
Whatever.
contact her though.
Trying to prepare yourself for everything that can happen. But, you know, she could tell me to drop dead too, but I don't think that'll last forever. I'm pretty optimistic about it. You know, people say, well, maybe she doesn't even know she's adopted. I don't think so.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Mallon from Sarasota, Florida. Adult adoptee. Found my birth mother about 6.5 years ago. Had a very close, ongoing relationship. It's been going on great. And now I'm starting to feel the need to find the birth father. I know where he is. I just haven't contacted him because he hasn't been receptive to it yet. So I'm kind of trying to think ahead to what might come of if I do this in terms of his family situation too. And finished an MSW a year or so ago, so also hoping to get into working with adoptive families and adoption issues. So hoping that can be helpful to me.
How does your birth mother feel about you searching for your birth father? Yeah.
She contacted him for me right after I found her. Just no response now. So she's been.
So she's not threatened?
No.
That's great.
There's enough distance and space there.
I'm Deanna Rogers from Michigan. I'm a group leader, also very active in legislation, and birth mom who found 8 years ago and had a wonderful reunion and had a good relationship for 6 months. And she lives in Illinois. I got as far as Chicago on my second invitation to meet her or be with her, and she called and said she could no longer see us. So we went back home and waited for 5 years, not knowing what the world had happened. 5 years later, her ex-husband called me out of the blue, so that's 3 years ago, and explained to me that she's very unhealthy emotionally, and it goes on and on. She was raised in a very wealthy family, related to Genetiers, and there's possible sexual abuse, and it just goes on and on and on. And so I have a relationship with her ex-husband, 2 pictures, phone calls, and he allows me to send gifts to my grandchildren. She doesn't have children. So when you said that it makes a difference when you have children, it really did. In fact, she is not a good mom.
And there are exceptions to everything, and that goes back to what I was talking about, of our expectations about these adopted parents, and then sexual abuse, physical abuse,
It's a real mixed
alcoholism,
bag there.
dysfunctional families. Don't always get what we expect or what we were told.
So I guess I live with the whys, you know. Where did it all come from? I mean, I know you can't possibly sort it out this earth. It's just out here.
The other thing, when you talked about when they have children, it doesn't always matter, but you're also talking about the complications of having a bad adoptive family too. And so it just kind of snowballs that process really.
She has 2 adopted brothers who have similar problems.
Yeah, that's a good point. Some of the research that I've read indicates that adoptees who had bad experiences with their adoptive parents are less receptive to their birth parents because there's some underlying anger about she gave me up and she gave me up to these rotten people.
She's extremely hostile in all her relationships. When Rick called me and said it's not just you, it's everybody, even within him.
See, that's real painful for you, but there's still years to come. It may
Right.
change.
Hoping for the 30s, she'll be 28.
Thank you.
My name is Becky Beatrice. I'm from Berlin Meadows, Illinois. A member of Truth Seekers. I operate phone lines, at least help operate. I found my son 11 months ago. I have 4 other biological children. Finding him was a delirious experience. He accepted, was very accepting. We basically had, between he and I, an excellent relationship, which is particularly giving and sharing and meaningful, and there's a lot of commonalities which really help. He's also the only one of my children that looks like me.
I've heard that so many times before.
And it's really neat. I mean, we send Monet cards back and forth to one another. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's deep. Whatever I tried to do for any of my other children that didn't come out successfully in terms of shared interests, anything meaningful, it's all there. It's like I wrote a prescription. What would I like this child to be? And God said, well, here you go. And the only thing that isn't really too terribly neat is the hysteria that comes from my family, my dysfunctional family, who were briefed and shared with and tried to make part of this whole experience. And I thought everything was going along fairly well until out of the blue, pre-reunion came hysteric reactions from my husband, strange things, both pre-reunion and afterwards. Now, they all like him, even my youngest son, who ended up in a psychiatric hospital 10 days before he was to see him, which was not because of the relationship. It had to do with other unresolved factors that put him in the hospital. He hasn't seen him except for the one time in the hospital, and he really likes him. He really enjoyed being with him. He really felt good, but he backs off, wants to do it all himself. He doesn't want any involvement at all. If he's going to see him, if he's going to write to him, if he's going to have any contact, he's going to do it. And I am totally accepting of that. I'm not interested in pushing him. I feel sad because I think the two of them, the oldest has a lot to give to the youngest and wants to, and the youngest really wants it from the oldest and is having trouble reaching out for it, can't even write a letter. But my husband is loving and accepting to his face and behind his back, full of hysterical, aggravated, angry reactions that, including saying to me when my son was last here 2 weeks ago, that he was going to say anything he wanted to this boy. He didn't feel bound by anything. He was going to let it all hang out and say and do anything he wanted to do. Now, of course, this made me, quite hysterical inside, because here I have been carefully nurturing this relationship for 11 months, and he feels he can do and say anything he wants to do. And he screams at me, you love him more than you love our other children. But basically, really what he's saying also is, he's really not talking about those other children. He's talking about feeling left out and unloved and everything himself. But when you're sitting in the middle of all this nice family, and you are trying to, have it all work out and know that you have no control over anyone except yourself, because that's the kind of program I've been.
That's the
through
most
the
important
years.
point, you're powerless.
Yeah, I mean, I really know that, and he's just feeding into it, A doctor that I have said, none of them want you to be happy. He said, don't show any happiness, because they don't want you to feel happiness. Now, I think this is sick and sad.
So you feel like you're still being punished?
I feel that overtly and indirectly, they are definitely trying, you know, to punish me. This sounds paranoid, but it's not. I mean, if you could watch it all happen. My oldest daughter loves her brother. I have two twins below that. The first twin would have gone years ago to find her brother. The second twin is scared that something's going to happen and her mother, who has a chemical imbalance, is going to land in the hospital. And then the fourth one is my son. And then we have father, and right now I really feel very much, I feel like it's coming from everywhere.
A lot of confusion.
I feel that my marriage is really definitely in question. Has been for some time, but it's like, it's the tip of the iceberg. I love this boy, I love him to death. There's one other problem here. I have a chemical imbalance, and I could have sworn from the beginning that when he talked about lithium in a conversation that we had, that he wasn't really talking about it as an outsider, and that maybe he and I may have some shared chemical imbalance. About a week and a half before he got here, the last time, he happened to talk about, well, you know, I was talking about feeling really at peace and feeling very good about things, which probably doesn't sound like that's what I've been saying in the last few minutes, but I really have. And so he's made some reference to the fact of perhaps not needing lithium. And I thought, now where is this coming from? Because I told him very clearly, I not only do need it, but I will always need it. And I think he's having his own experiences with lithium. He's not being, you know, direct. And I don't know whether this is because he may feel that I may feel guilty about the fact that he has the problem in addition to my own. And true, I may feel something about it. But
Well, that's the kind of thing
I
you
do know that I had no
You have no control of passing on genetics. I mean, manic depression does,
Right.
bipolar disorder does, our
Exactly.
families.
Exactly. None of I have addictions in my family, and he had an addiction. You know, I'm not getting, you know, a complete story.
Excuse me a moment. Now, how old did you say your son was?
He's 26.
All right, but if you take any psychology classes, you learn about lithium, about, you know, all these situations. So I'm not saying that, I'm just saying there's another possibility. He just could be educated.
He's more than educated. He's massively educated, you know, that for openers. I mean, he got his degree in sociology from Brandeis, and whether he's doing anything, you know, for a lot with it, but I mean, when, you know, he talks about his conversations are very deep, his wording is very, I mean, he is a bright and educated young man, but there's a separation there. You can tell what comes from education and what comes from where he is, and I feel that's where he is. But I don't know how to get to it and how to share it with him and how to have it be okay.
Well, at some point, you may be able to ask.
Yeah.
It takes time. And it feels risky right now. Thank you.
I wasn't here when you set this up.
I'm just asking that people introduce themselves and talk about if they're a member of the triad or if they're a clinician or whatever. And also, if you can just state one thing that you'd really like to get here today so that we can try and meet people's needs.
Oh, good luck.
At least address them.
Try and yeah, address people's needs. That's good. That's better.
Oh, my confidant over here knows the whole story, so I don't have to tell them. I'm Nancy Bernstein, birth mother. Was found, will be 2 years, July 1st, since a private detective called me. She was hired by my daughter to find me. An hour later, little
brother, found out that he had a sister he didn't know about. It was wildly, ecstatically wonderful and happy and terrific, and letters and gifts and tapes and everything was great. Almost everything was great. My first meeting was an Indiana regional meeting. We live in Bloomington, Illinois, but we're from Cleveland, Ohio. And I felt guilty, as this letter said, because even though I think something was off, still this sounded great in letters and all, and I tried not to show all the gifts and everything, but it was, from the beginning I sensed her trying to pull me close, but keep me out there too. Got very mixed messages. She never promised anything, really. She said, she was very honest to say that she wanted to know her heritage. That all her life she wanted to see somebody who looked like her.
I hear that over and over again.
Nobody's ever looked like her. Her reason for searching went back to when she was a little girl and she was at a fair or something, and you dressed up in period costumes, and they took a tintype of you, and she would show that to her friends and say, "This is my grandmother when she was young." And they'd say, "Really?" And she said, "No, it's just me. I have that picture." And she found out when she was at the University of Michigan that if you were born in Ohio before 1964, your records are open. And she went to Columbus, Ohio with 2 girlfriends, and they gave her her birth certificate. And our case was a little unusual in that the birth father's name and my name and where I lived was all on the birth certificate. And she waited about 8 years to look. She felt that her parents were threatened. They were outwardly supportive, but she knew they were threatened, very threatened. And for some reason, she wasn't ready. That was enough for her then. Actually, she went to the agency with the birth certificate at that time with her dad. And they said, we don't give identifying information. And she said, I don't need that. I have it. And so she was given 2 pages about me. She knew my mother's, my sister, everybody's names, our hobbies, our occupations, everything. And that was enough for 8 years. And then she met an adoptee at a party 2 years ago. And anytime she would meet anyone who was adopted, she would say, have you made the search? And this gal said, yes, and I located my birth mother 2 days after she was killed in a car accident. And she said, I always felt you would be there if I ever wanted to look. And then she knew she had to look. Within 2 weeks, I think it is, after she went to the private investigator, he had located me. And that's a long story too, but
how was it to be found?
Incredible. I had seen Donna Cullum on Donahue in '77, and registered, sent $5, thinking that it was a national registry and that if she ever looked, she would find me. And of course, that helped not at all. And didn't know who else to call or where to go, or that there were groups or agencies or anything. Just didn't know what to do about it. Always felt that when my sons were older and established in their careers, that I would tell them. I was just beginning to tell close friends. As my sons were grown and I had more time to think about it, and as all the people in my family had died, the people that this was done to protect. My grandparents, and although I think my grandmother, she certainly would have loved me. But they're all gone, and I live with this the rest of my life. I even let hints out to Doug occasionally that there was something in my past that I would tell him someday. But,
did your husband know?
Yeah. Yeah, and the first thing he said was, I'm glad you told me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was somebody nobody would ever want to marry because I had 2 strikes against me. I am a hemophilia carrier, and my older son has hemophilia. And then this, so this is it. As a matter of fact, my father said, when somebody asks you to marry them, you don't answer. You bring them to me, and I will tell them. So I remember this tearful, my husband, which just was when he proposed to me, he just wasn't going to take any of this. You tell me now. What do you mean? I'm going to talk to your father. Tell him I love you. I want to marry you. So my father was on a business trip, and we called him, and I remember crying over the phone and saying, and Daddy, he knows. He still wants to marry me. So, yeah, thank goodness he knew.
But right now, we've gone through stages. This is a bad one. I really didn't even want to come, and Dick said we need it more than ever. I overdo everything. I tried in the beginning to be careful and not overdo it, but that's what I do. So there have been a lot of gifts, but it was back and forth. It was give and take. Our feeling, and my family and friends have been saying this to me for a long time, was that she got what she wanted. She wanted her heritage, and she's satisfied. And so that was okay with me. If it was partly one-sided, I understood. I understood that I have a love for her that she doesn't have for me. But I was bound and determined to be perfect. So perfect that she didn't have to love me. So I accepted anything. And she really did legislate this entire relationship. The first sign that something was wrong was about our third trip to Cleveland. And I mean, our visits were very short. I have never been alone with her for more than 1 hour, ever. And so when I was in Indiana, people were saying, what do you mean you've never been alone with her? You have to. I mean, how will you get to know each other? It was like we would go to Cleveland and she would want a restaurant relationship, I call it. We'd sit, I mean, my mother and my husband and her parents' friends are coming to the restaurant all around us, and this is our relationship, you know.
Well, there's insecurity if she's protecting herself from getting too connected.
Well, 3 months ago she had twin daughters. When she announced she was pregnant, I was very disappointed because it was too soon. We didn't get to know each other yet, plus the fact she didn't tell her parents. I mean, she was so open and wonderful and all that I thought that she must have parents who were also like that, and that wasn't true. She didn't tell them that she had found me until 3 months after. So when we first met, we went back to Cleveland. We had to sneak off to the west side for dinner. That's where I was cloistered away from the world 30 years ago, on the west side. So here I was back again, hiding, still hiding. 30 years ago, I wasn't allowed for 6 months to go outside of the house in which I was living.
So it's all a re-emerging grief and shame.
But when the babies were born on February 7th, I relived her birth. I wasn't allowed to see her. And now I wasn't allowed to see her babies. She has never, ever said to me, I ever want to see you again. I started to say before, on this one trip, we don't get to Cleveland very often. I kept telling her that, like I had to say, well, it's okay, you won't see me too much, you know, but what's too much? It just happened that first year that we had a number of reasons to go back there. My mother lives there, my husband's aunt lives there. I mean, so I recall. And about the third time she said, are you here because John has a business trip and you want to see his aunt, or are you here because of me? And I answered glibly, and then I thought, I hung up the phone, I went, oh, what does that mean? Wait a minute. And her husband even said, we talked about it that day, he said, I don't feel you're coming too often, I don't feel that way at all. And he would say, we'll come to Illinois, Nancy, don't worry, or we'll come before the babies are born, don't worry. She's never been to my home. And the final blow was a couple of weeks ago. We got back from Florida, there was a videotape. I feel she's really punishing me. It's not quite as bad as it sounds because my older son admitted to me that he was home and he wasn't thinking, he saw it first, and he was thinking that I would be jealous if he saw it and I didn't. I still think she should have known better than to send. It was 2.5 hours of her parents with her babies. It starts out with a baby shower with her mother writing down all the gifts. And then you see her in the hospital the day of the birth. And her husband says, what did you do today, hon? And she said, oh, nothing. I just brought, nothing much. I just brought 2 new lives into the world. It's been 12 hours since I first awakened feeling yucky. And I don't remember the next part, but she ends by saying, and I'm lying here in my hospital room with all my special people around me, Mom and Dad. And I looked at the TV and I said, okay, baby, I'm slow, but I get the message. So I stopped everything. Letters. She called on my birthday and sang happy birthday to my answering machine, and I was sitting in the kitchen listening to it and didn't pick up the phone. I feel that she opened us up completely. I gave everything. Some people say I gave too much, too fast. I gave her everything. When I had my sister track down a picture of the birth father, and send it to me, and I had negatives made and enlargements sent. I have told her everything I have to give. I think it's her right to know. But I hate to complain because I know there are people who would like to be in this situation. But right now it doesn't feel like lucky. And right now my husband was here speaking on open records in the last 2 weeks. I said, well, intellectually I believe in it, but emotionally I want to say I'm really sorry she found me. I was better off before because I could fantasize that if she found me, she would love me and we would have this great relationship. And I can't fantasize anymore. And I don't think that you have ever faced rejection until you've been rejected by the child that you love.
Carol, excuse me, can I say something to Nancy? Nancy and I spoke last night. She told me about the videotape, and I thought about it for a few hours before I fell asleep. She made that tape for herself, not for you. Yeah, but this is a copy of a tape she made for herself. She made for you. I don't think she really wanted. I really thought about this, and I don't think she did it to hurt you. I think if she could have had you there, she would have. Like I said before, nothing is ever enough for us. So, but you have to start thinking differently. Like, take these little things that she's giving you. Take the call where she sang happy birthday. Take the tape and try and turn around your feelings that she's trying to include you. Take the little things that she's doing. Take those and think about those. And I mean, like I thought, we have to take crumbs.
I think her feelings are real good ones.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think an adoptee has any idea what we I really don't. Any more than I did not understand what my daughter lived through. I had no idea. I thought they had a wonderful life. I didn't know they had
But I thought when she
No.
had babies, that would do it.
Oh, I can see where it would be triggering almost the opposite.
Oh, it could
Really
trigger
protective
anything,
territory.
yeah.
I wrote her a letter during pregnancy saying, do you ever, in your quiet moments alone, talk to your babies and know that they are a part of you and will be for the rest of your life, and that nothing could ever destroy the love that you feel. I also was aware that she might look at these babies and say, how could any woman do what you did?
I'll tell you, Nancy, I agree with what people are saying. The fact of the matter is also that our perceptions are our realities. And right now, you're feeling very hurt. I agree that to the extent that you're able, I think it would be important for you to start trying to change some of those perceptions and trying to, when she sang happy birthday over the phone, trying to see that as she is trying to establish a connection. She's ambivalent. I think there's some anger and some love, and she doesn't really know what she feels, and there's still a future and you don't know. Right now it hurts something awful. However, there's still time. There's a lot of time.
Because as somebody said yesterday, she knew she was looking. She was prepared. She wrote pages and pages of a journal that she sent to me because she would, you know, with all her thoughts up to the reunion and all. And this was dumped on me. Later I heard that there are ways to have help with this, to know what to expect. I was reading an adoption book all the way to meet her, but I had nobody helped me or told me how to react or what to do or anything. And it was like as we stood in her living room looking into each other's eyes, I remember looking at this stranger and thinking, who are you? How do I know who you are? And our eyes piercing each other's eyes and thinking, very corny, the eyes are the window to the soul. Is this who I think it is? And it was like, then, what do we do now? And she even admitted to me, she was so focused on reaching me on the phone and would I accept her, she didn't think about that after. And we just didn't know what to do with this in
And see, never having been adopted, of course, myself either, the understanding I have from the adoptees I talk to is that they feel like they were rejected at birth. And as fearful as we are as birth mothers of searching for them, my son said to me that it was so important to him that I was the one that did the searching, because it meant I was retracting the rejection. And he said probably if he would have gotten into his 30s, he would have searched, but it wouldn't have been as meaningful as that I had sought him out. So there may be some of that.
Because she said all the right things on the phone. You know, when my husband handed me the telephone, he spoke to her first, and I said, I don't know what to say to you. This had just happened, like 10 minutes before. All I can think of saying is I'm sorry. And she said, that's not why I'm calling you. I've had a happy life. I've always known I was adopted. I have 2 wonderful parents. Everything sounded great. And I don't blame you, and that's not what this is about.
But see, it's that primal abandonment that she's not even conscious of that's creating the anger and the ambivalence, and she needs time to work that through. And you obviously matter to her, or she wouldn't send the tape. You're not even angry at people unless they matter to you. You just don't care. If she sent the tape, I don't know if she sent the tape to push your buttons, or if she sent the tape because she thought maybe it'd be a way for you to see your grandchildren. Whichever way, she cares. She cares enough to make you angry, or she cares enough to want something. She cared enough to call and sing you happy birthday, to either wish you a happy birthday or to make you feel bad and rub it in. But she sure cares about you. She's certainly not neutral.
You're on her mind, one way or another. You are on her mind. I mean, you are there.
She has her issues to work through,
Right.
too.
I mean, we have a joke in our group, you know, a birth mother will say, well, my daughter told me to drop in. We go, yay, she said something to you. Yeah, we don't care what it is, drop dead.
One thing that I echo what Bobby said, even though I have great sensitivity and feeling for what Nancy feels, even though she may not totally comprehend that. But when she always said that Susan signed her letters with a heart, Susan. Well, not too long ago, Susan sent a card and signed it, Love, Susan. And I tried to get her to understand that that was an amazing step, perhaps, for this girl with withheld feelings, who always signed a heart and now can write the word love.
That's true. My son never wrote Dear Bobby or Love Michael. It was always Bobby, Michael. And just in the past year, and he admitted it, he's just been able to write Dear Bobby or Love and Love Michael. I mean, little things like that we don't even realize are so hard for them.
My son writes, Dear Mom, love your son Troy. When we're in the same room together and he says, Mom, we both turn around, and she has no problem. But my fear is when he gets older, what's this going to do to me when he starts saying, you...
But your own child can do that.
That's right.
The first letter I got from my son was signed yours truly. The second letter I got was to Mommy from Tommy. But believe me, we've been through some stages. Let's just finish with the introductions real quick here and then move on.
Okay, well, basically, my story is the same. It's,
And
my name's Doug Bernstein. I would say my relationship with Susan hasn't gone through the highs and lows as much. It's basically the same as when we started, which is limited contact and birthday cards and Christmas cards or whatever. And I'm hoping someday that it'll be more, but for now, if that's what she's willing to give, I know she's very busy.
How did it feel to have a sister that you...
Well, about the first couple of days, I was completely shocked, and it's taken me a while to get used to the idea, but...
Any
I love
jealousy?
it.
No,
I don't think so.
No,
I think my only thing was I got somewhat protective. I know my mom tends to go into things too deeply, and I was afraid that maybe Susan was only looking for her roots or whatever. Once she found where she came from, that was going to be enough for her, and I thought maybe my mom would end up getting hurt, which is going to happen regardless of what I do or say. I can't control it, but that was one of my first reactions, was concern that I wanted to make sure that nobody, my mom, didn't get too hurt. But
Thank God for these precious children. Do show their. In his shock, his first comments were that he hurt for me, having to keep this secret all these years. And I doing because we are so close, and how you know, how could I explain why I'd never told him? And that was no problem. It was dear and wonderful and sweet. It's good.
Thank you.
And
Somebody came in.
Oh. I'm Barbara, I'm a birth mother. And I found my daughter 3 years ago. She's 23. She's a lot like me. Our emotions are a lot alike, so we have a understanding of each other. I can't really have anything to do with her adoptive family because they just don't want to recognize that I exist, because I never should have found her. Except that my daughter always wanted me to find her, and I always wanted to look for her, so we were on the same wavelength for all those years. And after I did find her, I found that she had been in contact with the agency and wanted to find me. So, you think you get a good start here. Well, we're never ready for what goes on. And I think my biggest problem is that I don't know where to put her in my life. Because I met this perfect stranger that I loved. Yet I didn't know her. She wasn't like a friend or a sister or a daughter or anything. And I find that a lot of birth parents have the same problem with trying to define what kind of relationship they're going to have, except that they want one in most cases. I had not told my other daughter, who is now 20. She was angry about that. I had not talked to my family about it since the day out of court in 1966. So I'm just going to cut right to the chase and tell you my problem. My problem is that my mother and father are not as accepting of her as I want them to be. Because she wears too much makeup, because she doesn't dress the way they think she should, and she does not have perfect English.
Were they instrumental in her relinquishment?
Well, let's put it this way. I went right from the doctor to the home. I went mothers, and pretty soon social work was coming. Social work was coming every week. I thought for years that I absolutely made my own choice, and it didn't even hit me. I was telling them, you tell your parents at 16 you're pregnant, it's the worst day of your life, and that you want to keep this child. The next thing you know, you're going to all these different places, and you get out of court and you think, what happened?
So you think perhaps your parents' rejection of her now is guilt?
Yes, I do. Which comes to the real problem. I'm director of the Milwaukee group, and my mother wants to come to these meetings, and I'm panic-stricken. Because I'm not ready. Because I don't know what I'm feeling, and I don't know what she's going to say. As we all are afraid of what our parents are going to come up with. And
She doesn't dress right, she
No.
wears
And I love this child, and I think they don't know how much she means to me. And I think all of us here are the only ones that know how much these children mean to us.
When you were 16, you were powerless to tell your mother what you wanted to have happen. Now
Yes.
you can tell your mother, if you don't want her there and you're not ready for her there, then that's your choice. And when you're ready.
But the other part of me wants her to embrace this issue too. I want my mom and dad, before they die, to know how much this means to me.
But you also need to give yourself time to be ready.
Yes. Maybe your mother has seen what's happened to you through the support of this group, and really wants this for herself, and is looking for something like that. And maybe she feels she needs that support. You know, to get rid of her guilt or whatever.
You know, but my reaction is, well, then she needs to find her own group. You know,
Yeah.
it's my group. You know,
Send her to.
I'll send her to Green Bay.
Really, let her drive to Green Bay.
Mom?
Really, I mean, she could go with us.
No, see, my mother believes that
Send
if
her
you
to
have a
GA.
drinking problem, to stop
Grandmother's
drinking. If you have a drug problem, to stop taking drugs. And so then you should just get over this. And how do you explain to someone like that
But
that
would she wouldn't read anything if you gave her a book, would she?
She needs to read Birth Bond. If she'll read it. Let me just check with you all before we continue about time frame, because I'm kind of flexible here, but I've got some things that I would like to do that worked out well last time. Since I thought we were starting at 9:30 and we didn't, I mean, we were supposed to start at 9. I don't know, how many of you have to leave 11? Or
I believe 11:15.
11:15, okay, so we can go to at least 11:15.
Well, you could go,
Can any
I'll
of you,
just.
can any of you stay at 11:30? Can we
Yes,
get
we're
in?
scheduled
Okay,
to stay at 11:30.
It says 11:45. Oh, okay. They told me 9:30 to 11:30, so that's fine. I think we've got plenty here that people need to address. Your handouts, does everybody have a handout? I know some people came in. Your handouts talk about stages. We're going to go through those. I think that's real important. We didn't do that yesterday, and I think we need to do that today.
Carol, there's just one thing I'd like you to touch on. I just thought of it as we're going along. What do you do, does anybody have any suggestions? I have been reunited with my birth father, but he refuses to tell the rest of his family, like his wife of 40 years and 4 other siblings.
Okay, if you can hold on to that for just a few minutes, we're going to talk about birth father issues, and just remind me, because that's an important part of the puzzle too. What I'd like to do before we get into the discussion that we did yesterday is kind of a warm-up to sort of just get us a little relaxed and kind of tuned in to the idea of what it's like to be an infant, maybe, and what it's like to go through 9 months in your mother's womb and then be separated for whatever length of time. So I'd like to do a little guided imagery with you. Is everybody comfortable with that? Do you think we can try to turn the lights down this time? If everybody just get real comfortable, maybe you can take your shoes off if you want. It's nice to not have your legs crossed because that cuts off your circulation. You can even put your papers or purses on the floor and just kind of wiggle your fingers and let your hands kind of loosen your lap. Get as comfortable as you are able in those chairs. That's great, Rose. Thanks. And I'd like you to start out by just closing your eyes and just breathing. Breathing deeply in through your nostrils, filling your chest up with air, exhaling, and just getting in touch with yourself. Sounds inside yourself, feelings inside yourself, the noises outside yourself, any sounds coming from the other rooms, the air conditioning, the sound of my voice. And as you breathe in, you might want to think of the word so. And as you exhale, think of the word hum. Because that develops a kind of rhythmic, sing-songy, relaxing so hum. As you breathe deeply, filling your chest up with air, you might notice that the air feels cool in your nostrils as you inhale. And just feel whatever's there. You might still feel tense. You might be starting to feel relaxed. Any thoughts that intrude, just let them. If you need to move or wiggle or scratch, whatever. Just be in touch with yourself and your breathing. And just so we can get a sense of our muscles and the difference between relaxation and tenseness, I'd like you to just go through your muscle groups. Let's start with our feet and just tighten up your feet. Tighten both your feet. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Just wiggle your toes. And now focus your attention on your legs, your calves and thighs. And just tighten up both your legs. Tighten all those leg muscles. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Relax your legs and your feet. Wiggle your toes. Think of your legs like just the legs of a rag doll, loose. And moving up to your torso, your abdomen,
sciatic muscles. Just tighten up that lower torso. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Relax your abdomen, your buttocks, your legs, your feet. And moving further up your body to your upper torso, your chest and back muscles. Just tighten that upper torso. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Relax your chest and back, stomach, buttocks, and legs, feet. And now just focus on your hands and maybe ball your hands up in fists and just tighten those fists. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Wiggle your fingers. Wiggle your toes. And move your attention to your arms now, your forearms and biceps. And tighten the muscles in your arms. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. And move on up to your shoulders and neck. Tighten the muscles in your shoulders and neck. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Relax. And move up to your face and head and just tighten up the muscles in your skull and face. Maybe just make a grimace. Tighten up your face. Tighten those muscles. Tighter, tighter, tighter. Now relax. Just wiggle your shoulders a little bit, your hands, your arms, your toes, your legs. Just be in tune with your body. Some of you still may feel a little tense and want to tighten and relax the muscles, and that's okay. Just breathe deeply, tuning more and more inside yourself. Sounds inside yourself. Sound of your heartbeat. Sound of my voice. What I'd like you to do is just imagine yourself going back in time. You might use a staircase, a spiral staircase with plush carpeting of your favorite color. And you can go down those stairs one step at a time. You might want to see yourself going back gently in a tunnel. Back into your earlier life, maybe down a winding slide. Whatever image feels good. Just see yourself going back in time, back to your younger self, back to your childhood. Back to being a toddler. Back to being an infant. An infant, helpless, lying there in a crib or cradle. An infant lying there, cuddled in her mother's arms, his mother's arms. Feeling safe, snug, secure. If you can just picture yourself floating, a little tiny baby floating, safe and warm. Inside your mother's womb now. Very secure. Very nice. Very safe. Totally engulfed. Totally free from all the fears of separateness. nurtured, cared for, all your needs being met before you're aware of even having needs. Peace, serenity, safety. And yet, you may hear sounds outside your mother's womb. We've learned now that the fetus feels much more than what we ever realized. Maybe your mother's singing you a lullaby. Hear the sound of her voice. Maybe your father's there talking to you inside your mommy's tummy. You hear the sound of his voice. Maybe the doctor's there with his stethoscope and you feel something. Maybe your mother coughs. It feels like a wave inside to you. Safe, secure, but aware. Aware of your mother's heartbeat. Aware of the oneness with her, the connection. Aware of the sounds outside of her. And then it's time to be born. And we've learned that birth is a traumatic experience for the infant as well as the mother. Pain and shock and leaving a warm, safe, liquid environment out into the cold world. Strange hands, maybe forceps, strange noises, strange people touching you. And then perhaps you're cleaned up and the umbilical cord is cut, the lifeline's cut. You're separate from her now. Wrapped up, perhaps in a blanket, placed in her arms. Feeling good, but not quite as safe and secure as before. And then what happens next? The birth mothers and adoptees, sometimes it's a separation that goes on for many years, forever. I once had an adoptive mother tell me that when she held her 3-week-old son, tightened up, stiffened in her arm, she said, he knew I wasn't the one. Yet they attached. She's a wonderful woman and we've had a good mother-son relationship. She's very much aware that birth mother matters and plays an important role in her son's life. Just keeping these feelings in mind, I'd like you to just climb back up the stairs, float back up from wherever you were. And I'd like you to come back to this room feeling energized and peaceful. And when you're ready, just open your eyes, stretch, get back in touch with the here and now. Everybody with us? Anybody care to comment on how that felt? How you feel now? What you got in touch with?
I couldn't feel it because I don't believe my mother ever, I don't think my mother ever, I can't imagine my mother ever nurturing me like that. I can't imagine her ever feeling.
I understand.
So I can't feel it from her.
I understand. I had the same experience. My mother was what they would call an inadequate personality disorder. If the DSM-3 still had that in it, and I don't feel I ever bonded with her either, so I understand exactly what you're saying. It's very hard for me.
I feel the same thing, because I always felt this pulling for my own mother. I mean, like it was something she thought she should give to me, do for me. And she was sweet and nice, except there was something vitally missing. Until I heard from a nurse who lived with us my first 18 months, who said my mother never even wanted to help hold me. And then I knew what it was.
So this is painful for someone. Anybody else?
I divorced my mother when we were emotional. And we have a better relationship. I grieved my loss, but then I never had a mother in my life. And it's altogether different. How do you have a better relationship? I'm not afraid of her. She doesn't have any control over me. She has more respect for me. She's more careful what she says. She can't hurt me.
I'm so anxious to see the evolution. Part of the trip up to Wisconsin was not only take my daughter to see her birth father, but she finally met my mother after a year and a half. And she couldn't understand why I didn't take her there first. But I have a similar sort of lack of relationship. And it was just overwhelming for her. She said, I don't care if I never meet that woman again. And I've never been able to say that. You know, and it was just like, I can say that, you know? And I'm just like, wow. Taking my daughter there to kind of get that straight. And I doubt I will see my mother again. I mean, talk about it. We've been all over, but I had the same sensation. I remember feeling very connected to my daughter. Not, I mean, because I knew I wasn't going to keep her, so I couldn't touch this baby that was in me and stuff, but I remember feeling a real flow. I mean, she was just a part of me, and yet I'm 100% sure my mother never felt that, absolutely, with any of her children. Same sort of thing, just wasn't beyond her capabilities. So
One of the things that is talked about more frequently now is the genetic attraction. And it's also, and that's like, you don't have the inhibitions of growing up together and things like that, but there's also the genetic disaffection. That you didn't have that relationship either, so she's free to say anything she needs to.
Exactly,
As she needs to at that moment in time.
Right, right.
How many of you that feel you didn't bond with your mothers feel that the mother had something to do with you being forced to relinquish or coerced to relinquish? Is that I'm picking that up from several people here.
You know, for me it wasn't coercion. I was 16 also, and there was no way I wanted my mother to have a connection with that child, and I knew she would if I was 16. You know, I feel I made the decision, but that was because I had no other alternative either. You know, it was like
My main problem is that I had a really wonderful childhood and mother. And my anger was that couldn't she understand that I wanted to do that too? I knew that, I kept thinking if I could just bring this baby home, it would be okay. Because my mom and dad were really good people, and they loved children. And that's where a lot of my anger comes from. I thought that would have worked out.
And what I hear over and over again, and what I still feel myself and have not worked through, is how can a woman carry a baby for 9 months and then have her daughter, see her daughter carry a baby for 9 months and expect her daughter to give that baby away? How could that be possible? How could she have loved me and bonded with me and expected I could do that? And I hear that here.
She did. My mother didn't force me or coerce me. She did it the other way. She silently pulled away, was apathetic, and offered nothing.
I made my own decision. I was 22 and I left home and went from Maryland to California and delivered there. Because in our house, the topic of conversation at the dinner table was, oh, guess whose daughter is pregnant? And I wasn't going to be the topic of their conversation, so I left, not to hurt them. And I made my own decision. And I remember my mother calling me on the phone in the hospital and I was crying. And she said,
it, get it over with, and forget about it, and move on.
We didn't talk about it for 27 years.
Yeah, that's
Well, twice. I got a drink into her. My mother is a very tough, strong person. We found out, Becky and I have a lot in common. We found out doing visualizations on a healing workshop that we are really connected. I mean, it's really funny because we're both from Cleveland originally. I had come to Chicago to meet her. And there's lots of coincidences between us. Our fathers worked together. Her father was my father's boss. Right around the time we were having these babies that they were hiding from the world and their fellow employees and you know, never shared this. But beyond that, we've also found out that in the last 2 years, Becky's cousin and my mother have become best friends. And they're about to leave for Scandinavia together, and to this day, they have not acknowledged that they have us in common. They won't talk about us. I mean, my mother didn't want anybody to know Cleveland. She still doesn't, and so they don't talk about it. It's just not there.
So it's still shame.
Yeah, well, the only day of vulnerability, first time in my life that I saw my mother vulnerable was when I told her that I had been contacted by a private investigator and that I had, in fact, by the way, met my daughter the night before. I didn't have anybody to go to right away after the phone call came. And I suddenly thought of my mother's friend, very, very best friend, who is a psychologist and who is her one, like a sister to her. And she was I wore her maternity glove, so she was in on this from the beginning. And her comment was, I think you ought to tell your mother and say to her, and I've always respected this gal, taken her advice, but not this time. She said, call your mother and tell her, Mother, I needed you 28 years ago, and I need you now. And I said, this one I'm doing myself. It was assumed. When my father picked me up at the airport, he said, because I hadn't gone to them in time, he said, why didn't you come to us right away when there would still have been time for an abortion? I wish you were alive so I could say, Daddy, did it ever hurt you? I didn't want an abortion. I don't believe in it for me. I couldn't do that. What did you think? It was going to go away? Did you think you were a little bit pregnant? And so, and I told myself that because I was this terrible failure and I had done this terrible thing to my family, that I would just go through the motions and do everything they said and question nothing. And that's exactly what I did.
You realize now that you didn't do it though, they did it to themselves. They let
Well,
feelings hurt.
the
You didn't do
interesting
anything
thing is
to
that
them.
when I told her, first she sucked in air like this and didn't breathe for a minute or two. Oh my God, I'm gonna lose her. Mother, you're right. Yeah. And my daughter and her husband, oh, that's a progress. I think I called her my daughter. I'm calling her Grace's daughter. Well, I had just come into the apartment and they were meeting my mother and we decided we all needed a drink of water or something, and she and I are in the kitchen. And that's only, I'll never say it again, I know. And she said, I hurt for all you've missed. She's so lovely. And then she said, and I never thought I'd hear this, we weren't fair to you. Daddy made all your decisions. We didn't give you a choice. I almost couldn't handle that. I didn't know what to do with that because I'd never seen her vulnerable before. And suddenly I became the mother and said, oh, Mother, it's okay. You didn't do this to me. I presented you with this. I couldn't believe that exchange. But now the barriers are back up, the walls are up. She Becky's cousin won't talk. And, now everything's okay. Now I can go on with my life. Just like when we left the adoption agency, Daddy said, get on with your life. It's over. It never happened. He wrote to the birth father and said, the child has been born. Nancy is back in her haven, which I call my prison. And our goal is to getting our daughter back as nearly as possible to the way she was before.
As if that's ever possible.
Never. When in fact, that's just when the drama begins.
Exactly. What I'd like to do now, one of the criticisms I got yesterday, and I think it was valid, is that everybody belongs to support groups and we all get to tell our stories and, you can all tell me, we can do whatever you want, really. I'm flexible. But people really wanted, they said, I've got these handouts, they said they really wanted to go through the stages. And one of the things I'm hearing from everybody is concern about, what's going to happen next, what stage am I in, and I think it might be helpful for us to do that. And I'd like to hear from all of you about these stages too. I don't just want to sit here and talk, but if we're going to have time to get that in, I think we need to do that.
One of the things I'd just like to say, there's 5 stages here: the honeymoon stage, the timeout stage, the showdown stage, the disengagement stage, and the solidifying stage. And what occurred to me is I didn't create these stages. This was created, I believe, by someone in the American Adoption Conference, and they've been around for a long time. But as I was putting these stages down, I do a lot of marriage counseling, and I've created some stages that I talk to married couples about, and it's 5 stages, and I realized it's exactly the same 5 stages. It's the honeymoon stage, which is, the adolescent love. It doesn't matter whether you're 16 or 60, you're madly in love. Then you move into this sort of, I call it disappointment stage, where just, it's okay, but it's not that great. The romance doesn't last forever. Then people move into, many people that I see, of course, because I'm a marriage counselor, move into a disengagement stage during which many of them get divorced, and that's when they come to see me. The husband starts playing racquetball, the mother starts paying attention to kids or whatever. Sometimes they both throw themselves into careers now, whatever. But they really disengage. Many of them get divorced. If they don't get divorced, they come to marriage counseling. Sometimes then they move into the reconciliation stage, where they start looking at each other as people and say, hey, you're not perfect, but I'm not perfect either. Let's see if we can work something out here. And then the 5th stage is what I call mature love, and that's when people make a choice daily to love each other, to realize that this is another imperfect human being that I've got here, and I'm going to choose to love this person with their faults and not try and change them and not try and have all these idealistic expectations. And if you look at these stages, reunion stages on the handout, we're talking about the same thing. And what really throws people for a loop, I'm, of course, a birth mother myself. I've interviewed several birth mothers. I've been to support groups. I've talked to a lot of people about this. It's the going from the honeymoon stage to the timeout stage that really knocks people for a loop. Not that some of these other stages don't get pretty hairy, too. But most of us have a honeymoon stage. I've only talked to one person so far that didn't have a honeymoon stage, and maybe some of you can... First, I talk about good reunions. The one person that had a good reunion that I talked to that didn't have a honeymoon stage found her daughter in a psychiatric hospital and had to work through a lot before they even got to any kind of stage. But for the most part, in the successful reunions, people go through this tremendous euphoria. My son and I met for the first time at Disneyland. Total fantasy. Yeah. And my daughter was there. My daughter is an only child, except for the fact that she has this brother. We just stood around. The first thing we did was go up and stand in the bathroom in the hotel room and look at each other in the mirror, looking at eyes and hands and faces and comparing everything. I had a grandson that I didn't even know about. He was there, so we were looking at him too. And we spent, probably a year in the honeymoon stage. And right now, I have to say we're in the timeout stage. The last time I saw my son and his family was in March, and I must admit it was a very different trip. We've talked about it and tried to process it on the phone a little bit. Things felt different. There was some pulling back. It's very frightening for me. It's the part of the stage that I've heard a lot of you talk about. It's that very beginning of the, okay, here we are, we're biologically related, we're not sociologically related, we weren't raised together. I came up with a different family of origin, different values, different whatever. We have all these genetic characteristics, we have all this wonderful stuff in common, and yet is that enough? Is that enough glue to hold things together? And
what I wanted to say is there's a lot of publicity around the honeymoon stage and a beautiful reunion. That's what I saw when I first decided to search. I saw the Oprah Winfrey show, the Mother's Day show, and here I went into a reunion that was just like on television and just so perfect. And then when I got to the next stage, I was like totally unprepared. There wasn't any, it was difficult to find anybody to help me because the same agency that arranged the reunion, they weren't concerned and again said the same thing, well now, go on with your life if you have a family, and you can't expect her to care about you, and you can't expect, she's too close to her mother, not you. You're too young to be her mother and too old to be her friend. All these horrendous things that they had told me. And it was so hard to find some kind of connection to a group or who to talk to. To me, there was no one else in the world like me.
I take it you weren't in a support group then?
No.
Are you in a support
Many,
group now?
There are not many in my area anyway. That was one of the things I wanted to find out from people here. Do they have places to go? There was
Where are you
nothing.
from?
Missouri.
Where in
What
Missouri?
part?
Yeah.
Independence.
We're in St.
There was nothing. I had no counseling.
Start a group.
Start a group. Yeah.
That's what I told Nancy, start a group. You'll hear people call that woodwork everywhere.
Both Sally Kyle and Joe Saul here can be connected for the nearest support group nearest you.
Or you can start now. Put an advocate.
There's just not enough publicity, I feel, about groups like this or for somebody to turn to. And when they see just such a happy picture and it didn't work out, that happy picture, you're right back to where you were before.
We were contacted by a local TV show wanting to do a reunion on the program, and we refused and said, look, there's a lot more to this that you really need to deal with. And they were really supportive and really neat, and they then decided to cover the whole gamut.
I wrote a letter following, to Oprah Winfrey about what happened afterwards and feeling that, maybe you should show another side because there's a lot more to this than
She
you can see.
She did. My son was on that show. It was a show concerning rejection, and he was rejected by his birth father.
Yeah, I saw that show.
And he was on that show. So she did do another side of it.
That made people real angry too, though, because those shows were so disconnected and they were so one-sided, both of them. And some people saw one and some people saw the other. And the people that saw the second one that was just all rejection, it was all horror stories, and it was really pretty depressing. And I was
That's
afraid.
what she wanted, though.
Yeah, but I was afraid that was going to turn people off to search.
That's what she wanted. And my son kept trying to get off of that topic and to say no, he didn't really feel it was a rejection, that he met him and that was fine with him. And she kept throwing in there, but you were rejected, but you were rejected.
That's the big thing, I think, that everyone looks at it and says rejection. And I think initially, that's how I felt. I personally was being rejected. And I don't look at it that way now. I don't feel that it's she kept saying this to me, my daughter, that I'm not rejecting you, I'm not rejecting. And I believe now that it wasn't me, it was the situation and that she couldn't deal with all her feelings. And she wasn't the adult the adoption agency said. Well, you're now 2 adults, so you can handle all of this. She wasn't really the adult. And no matter what her credentials were and her education, it made absolutely no difference. She was still not able to deal with the situation. And in a way like me, when I can't deal with something and there's hurt and there's anger towards my mother or towards anyone, I'd rather run away and see till I can get my head on a little straight and then maybe let that cool over. I think that's what she was doing. So I don't look at it as a rejection of me. It took a long time, but I'm a pretty special person.
This marks the end of Session 19, Tape 1. Please turn now to Session 19, Tape 2.
Here she came into my life. In this particular case, it was really, she looked first and then I did. So in essence, I thought this was going to be so perfect. But here, you came into someone's life in a way, no matter who did it, you have a responsibility to the other person's feelings. And somehow, people tend to, maybe younger people tend to feel that they don't have any responsibility.
If you could do it over, would you have made the connection? If you could go back and have it never happen?
I would, but I would have wanted some help before. I would have wanted to have been, and I guess in a way part of it might have been my fault in that I did send into Alma, but at that time when they told about meetings, I couldn't imagine myself going into a room full of people and saying, I am a birth mother, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard enough to come out and tell my children, it was hard enough to come out and say this to my in-laws,
You're talking about shame, unresolved
Yes,
issues with
yes.
shame.
So that I wouldn't go to that group. I don't know if they would have helped then, but definitely the groups that I'm involved in now would have certainly have prepared me a little more for it. I might have been, maybe I wouldn't have grabbed this kid and attacked her and, told her how much I love her, tell her how everything was for me. Maybe I would have been a little bit more careful.
I have to acknowledge, this was really important, and I think we need to get the message to people. Barb Gagnon and Sue Martin were the people that helped me search, and they both told me, go slow. Whatever you do, go slow. And I talked to my son, they found him August 12th, which is my mother's birthday, by the way. And I talked to him on the phone from August 12th until October when we first met. And we had hours and hours and hours of telephone conversations. So I really feel like that made a tremendous
Well,
difference.
I had contacted the agency, and within a week, they told me that she had been there. So I mean, you can imagine, you know, the excitement that I felt. And then she said, get in touch with me. So that Monday I called, and she said, well, we'll arrange a reunion. And I guess first she must have screened me a little bit by trying to find out if I was a psycho, or, you know, did I have normal children, was my husband a lunatic, you know, like all these things. And afterwards I said, you know, of course I was very, oh, what happened to it? I was saying, John did it. But, you know, afterwards I said, she wasn't so interested in my family. She was trying to find out if we were all sane. And since I passed that test, okay, dear social worker's daughter was able to meet me. I don't know what might have happened if I said something a little wrong, but that reunion was rushed because she was going on vacation. And so as soon as my daughter, who was away in Europe, came home, she came home ill, here her mother said, guess what, your mother called, and you're going to have a reunion. And this kid was like, you know, wasn't feeling well, and this was thrown at her, and never really had a chance to deal with all of that. But as far as I was concerned, I was a little selfish at the time. I didn't think of what a traumatic thing this was for her. This was a traumatic thing for me. I mean, I think now, yes, maybe I was a little selfish, but then in a way, you know, we're all a little selfish when we're dealing with emotions, and when we're ignorant of someone else's feelings. And it was my ignorance of not realizing her situation. But in essence, I think that if I knew what support, if I was told, hey, listen, okay, the agency said this is what you should be prepared for, or read this book over the weekend so that you'll know something before you meet her. The agency wasn't interested in preparing me. They didn't really give a damn about me or really my daughter. What they cared for was this adoptive mother came back and said, listen, you gave me this product. I want to know a little bit about the manufacturer. So now let's go back to the factory. Let my kids see what production line she came off of. Now that she knows all of that, well, that's just great. Who gives a shit about that factory? I mean, you know, no one cared. And that's the hurt and anger that I feel.
We have a group policy in Cleveland that someone has to come to 3 meetings and research meetings and prepare themselves. I mean, we've had people walk in and say, no, I want to search, I want to do it right now, and I want to get over it. And we say, no way.
Yeah, but that's if they come to you. What about the person like me that didn't even know that there was anything? That's why they must
Agencies need to be educated.
There has to be publicity.
Aside from open records, they should be pushing education more at the conference, those agencies being educated, and maybe people can go around
Maybe
to
education.
the towns where you live and try and educate the agencies.
You know what I think, though?
Let them learn the stages.
I think before openly, and you may all get angry, but you gave me the confidence to say this. Maybe before you push open records, you should push education, because when people go into something unprepared, no matter who they are, there's a lot of hurt. And
yeah, I believe in the education part first.
Well, we're still in our infancy. I mean, this is experimental.
All right, but everything is open records, big signs, open records. Okay, I'm glad that I was able to give my daughter something, okay? But I think had she have thought about this and understood a little bit, understood what it was like for me, had the agency understood I wasn't just a baby machine, had I had some understanding of what I would have been facing, then yes, I could have said, well, yeah, open records, that's great, because I would have been prepared, and I would say that everybody could have been prepared, and you could have thought, hey, that child might come to you. But when you're unprepared and think, hey, those records were sealed, this is over with, I went on with my life, and all of a sudden, one of the things that I said to my daughter is my whole world was shattered.
somebody said to me, you know, well, wasn't this better? At least you found out that you had a wonderful daughter, she had a good home, and she did, and educated, and all the things you hoped. And I said, not really, because I believed what I was told, and thank God what I was told was true. And I never for a moment doubted, and that's my ignorance, I never for a moment doubted. My daughter had everything wonderful, and even though I never really forgot her, I knew everything was all right in her life, and therefore I didn't, I didn't have to find out that she was okay, because I thought she was okay.
Yeah, I think with open records needs to come, it needs to go hand in hand.
Well, it's open record scares me because I think of all these kids, 18 years old, 19 years old, just running into vital records, getting a birth certificate, flipping a few pages in a phone book, finding a name, making a call, finding the birth mother. What are they ready for?
Nobody's ready. No one would
Nobody's.
be ready.
I mean, it's going to be just that. We're going to have a bunch of crazies running within this minute. Yeah.
Well, unless one of the things that's happening more now is open adoptions, which I think, that's controversial too, but that makes a big difference because then the contact is ongoing.
I mean, no one's going to be prepared emotionally. I mean, not that we were,
babies that were born in the 50s.
That's right.
You guys were carted off then wed mother some. With me, it was a little different. I was stuck on homebound and put in the house and sent to church and to pray for hours on end for that kind of stuff. But then right after me came open adoption. So we're all at different, for different reasons.
I liken it to when they let, psychiatric patients out of the hospital, dumped them on the street, provided no support. I mean, that's a great, yeah, it's a great solution to the
When my daughter met with me, one of the things she brought were pictures of her as an infant, which the social worker said, well, you bring pictures of you when you were, around the age of her birth. And another thing that she brought me, which had someone been involved as an intermediary who was really educated, not a social worker who was in the old system, but someone who was sensitive, because obviously she wasn't sensitive to my needs at all, this woman. And one of the things my daughter gave me, which you sort of hit upon, was her adoption announcement. I mean,
And she didn't mean to hurt you.
Because that is her lie. It doesn't. We're doing a family tree, and Glenda and I are doing this together, and one tree will be my family, and the other tree will be her and Mike's family, and Troy will be in the middle, and we'll have his birth date and the adoption date. I think it's wonderful myself, and I don't really feel any problem with it, because this is my son's life. The fact is he is an adopted child. I'm a birth mother. They are adopted family, and they are a family. To see them work together, they are a family, and that's what I wanted.
We're sharing with you, though.
Yeah.
Most of us
They
don't
are.
have this kind of adopted parents. They don't want
You've
it.
been trying.
I'd like to know if you know anyone else that's been in the position. I have a lot of anger because my son was never told, and I was the one that told him on the telephone, and he was thousands of miles away.
You know who I believe has information on that is Barb Gagnon.
Oh, I talked to Bart last night. He's 23 now, but
I discussed that with her when I was searching because she did my search, and that was one of the things. I know she's run into that before because she said one of the things you've got to watch out for is some of these kids don't know, they were never told, and then you're really in a bind.
Were you aware that that was a possibility?
no, not aware at all.
See.
Matter of fact, it was the farthest thing from my mind because I had his name since he was a month old. And the physician that delivered him I knew where he was.
Did you belong to a group at all?
No,
See, that
I
was the-
didn't know
yeah,
anybody
yeah.
at the time either. And it took me 8 months to call him again. But I'm really angry because they never told him. And he holds this over me. He feels like I should have gone to them first. And like I keep telling him, I said, well, if you want an apple, you don't go to pears. But he uses this particular thing.
And truth seekers, I don't know what they do now, but they did counsel me to not contact the adopted parents whenever I did.
I don't think you should either.
And my son told me, I am so glad you didn't contact my parents because they never would have told me and I probably never would have seen you.
We were
really believe in connect calls. We do not believe in adoptees or mothers that much handling it on their own. Because
I didn't
in
know anybody.
Yeah, I know. In a connect call, the person at the other end who is clueless can be gently advised of the situation. Their feelings are sorted out. It's not like they're somebody sitting there raw who nobody cares about their feelings. Their feelings are paid attention to. And by the end, you know, of the dialogue, it's meaningfully sorted out, and everything is set into motion in an appropriate way.
Well, I've
So-
done some for others, and which I've done, but, you know, at the time, I mean, I didn't know anybody at all, and it was just, you know, I had this fantasy that he was waiting for me as much as, you know.
Where do you live?
St. Louis.
I'd talk to Barb again and just ask her about that specifically, because I know, I'm almost certain she has information about that. I know
I don't know
she's,
if I said, did I tell her last night?
yeah, she's run into mothers where that's been, I mean, she should be able to hook you up, I would think, with some women that have been through that.
She can.
Someone over here, right before we started the meditation, brought up something about birth fathers, and I don't want to ignore that. What was that question?
I'm just in a situation where after I found my mother 5 years ago, she contacted the birth father. She knew exactly who he was, and I met him about 6 months later, and you know, we had a nice reunion. He told me all about his, you know, his side of the story. But what he refused to do, he said he never told his wife, and therefore his 4 children from his marriage, they knew nothing about my existence, and they still don't. And I'd like that changed. I did tell him that I would never push the issue while he was alive. That's how I felt 5 years ago, because that's what I had to tell him. But now I'm feeling different. I'm thinking that, first of all, from his point of view, he's really living a lie, because he hasn't even told his wife who he really is. You don't have a child, you know, and just forget it. And I think that these other 4 kids should know that they have a half sister. And I would like to know them as well.
How old are your half sisters?
Oh, they range from about 23 up to 38.
Have you had any counseling around this, or?
Not around that specific issue. I've had counseling. That's just one of my many issues. At Christmas time this year, I sent him a letter, and I did say some of these things. And in the past, I've always sent him a Christmas card, and then I immediately get one back with a little note that tells me what the kids are doing and stuff. And this year, I didn't get one back, and I haven't heard from him since I wrote this letter. And I think I must have upset him, scared him.
You know, do you send letters to
No, his office. He's self-employed, and I just sent his office and mark it personal and confidential, so he told me to.
You're sure he's still there? Still alive?
Never came back.
Wouldn't necessarily.
Can I say something? I think it might come from you just a little bit. I know in my group they gasped when I first told this, but I have a relationship with my daughter's birth father and have had for several years. He doesn't live in the state, but we keep in touch. And he knows about our daughter and that I've had a reunion, and he can't even deal with the whole thing. I mean, we will talk about each of our families and the concern, and the children are growing up in the families, but if I bring up that person, we don't talk about that person. He said his family would never, he would never be able to tell anybody, and he can't even deal with it. So at least at this point, I would say at least you have him. So I mean, whatever you have there, it's something. Maybe in time it'll change.
So you don't think I should just leave it alone?
I find that my pressuring isn't working, so I kind of backed off of that. And I backed off, it was easy because
I don't have the relationship that I want with my daughter, and she hasn't pursued it, so I feel, well, then it's not really a problem right now, but I anticipated and, it bothers me.
You'd have to make decisions about what you want. I mean, if you pursue contact with his children, you risk losing him, and so...
Well, that's already
you know,
happened to me basically
Yeah.
once with my birth mother.
And yet, I mean, there's no formula for this. There have been people that have gone ahead and contacted their siblings, and the siblings have been delighted. And
But, once you do that, the whole cat's out of the bag.
that's right.
And, it's very difficult. And then I risk also, what if they reject me?
There's tremendous risk.
I could wait till he said
Well, you can do that.
I mean, I will do it when he's dead. I mean, no
There's-
question about that. I
Yeah,
will do it.
but there's also your need, and he was one of the two people that participated in starting a process that you're not dealing with. And one of the things that you, I think, just because of yourself, you have an obligation to do, is let him be more aware of that, by letting him know. Kind of remind him of the fact that he did start something in process, and he doesn't have a lot of control over it at this point in time, that you have this really strong desire to meet your half-siblings, and that, you respect his desire to be able to facilitate that. What you might want to do is offer him an alternative. I need to do this. I'd like you to be able to start that process.
That's a threat.
Well, but again, it might
Are
be
you willing
about just
to-
talking about that.
Are you willing to meet him without being identified as to who you are or what you are?
I guess, yeah.
Something you would offer
But just to
him,
get
that's the thought,
somebody.
is to offer him that can you meet them without saying this is a distant relative, or this is a...
girlfriend.
Well,
Or
it's a
be
relative.
at
Yeah.
dinner at a restaurant at a particular time, and I'll be at another table.
Yeah.
And we'll see you there.
There are other alternatives you can offer him as opposed to just exposing the whole...
Well, they're all in different places, But we are all in different places.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could do it one by one.
Yeah.
Let me read you a little passage from Birth Bond. This is talking about the birth mother, but I think this goes for the birth father too. I think this goes for anybody that brings a child into the world. These are people that are saying, shouldn't the identity of birth parents be protected? And the answer they have in here is no. Open records advocates say a woman who brings a child into the world has a responsibility to that child. Only she can give him his story and explain why the adoption took place. Only she can deliver to the child his biological and historical identity. She can always refuse the petitioner, they say, but society should not guard her with the protective cover of anonymity. If someone has to be favored, they argue, let it be the innocent party, the adopted adult, who maintains that his rights are being denied and his best interests not being served by yesterday's arrangements.
That's fine, but I also get caught up here. They think that they've given me, both my birth mother and my birth father, I assume, think that they have given me that.
But what do you think?
Their responsibility was to give me all this family history and stuff, but not to continue with the relationship. Not giving you what you want, that's all I can give you.
No, they haven't given what you want. You've got all these
Not your
relatives.
heritage.
But you're saying someone has to take responsibility, but there are people who, no matter what, cannot take responsibility. I was told I was doing such a foolish thing, and it was terrible what I was doing, but I'm saying, hey, out of this little triangle here, my daughter's not accepting responsibility, her father isn't accepting responsibility. I believe in a way her adopted parents aren't accepting any response. I'm the only one that's doing it. So I mean, you can talk about what anyone's responsibility is that isn't going to move them. And sometimes, I guess it's very difficult if you have to back off a little bit, and say, this is what I have. At least you have a little something, Be grateful for that little something, and believe me, it doesn't come easy for me to say, but you have to just accept that for a while and hope that someday soon, maybe next week, that it'll happen.
Well, and I thought years ago, if only I could see my birth mother, if only I could know what she looks like, and find out a little bit about it. I'd be so happy. And then you get that, but as you say, you don't get that. You just want one.
it's whose rights matter. I mean, you can choose to accept what you're given and ask for no more, or you can choose to say, hey, I'm alive here and I have needs and feelings and I'm going to take a risk and I want more.
Why do you feel obligated to him to respect his feelings? What about your own?
Just because I gave him my word, and I'm, you know...
But you can change your mind. You didn't know your mind was going to change, but it did. So here you are with another opinion. So go back to him with that.
And at that point, you have to understand you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
What's that?
And at that point, you have to understand, be fully cognizant that you're taking a risk. You may be making a choice at that point, and if you're willing to do that, then you proceed.
Well, and you know, I've done that once before, and it's backfired on me. And
Well,
I'm so scared, you know.
But
I-
everybody
the whole
wants
thing-
the best for you, and that's why counseling and adoption groups are there, so that you will listen to what they say, because they don't want rejections and abandonments for you. They want it to come out all right, and sometimes the way you start to do things does not show that. As a birth mother, as an adoptee, you have to be ready to listen and pull back and wait and let go.
See, I'm so afraid that all this stuff is going to happen with my daughter, which is part of that scares me off.
My suggestion to you would be, to be real in touch with your feelings and wait until you're secure enough to make movement, but at the same time, recognize your rights and not just his.
And I guess I have a right to my feelings. Right.
That's your birthright.
And when I found my sister, I mean, I felt the same way. My mother said to me, "You have another sister," but they said at first they were going to look for her, and then things were starting to go sour with me, and they said, "Well, we're not looking for her. Don't you look for her?" And I thought, I waited a bit, and actually when I went to the conference in Boston, I met people from Truth Seekers here in Shapiro. They were in Boston, and 3 days after Boston, they had found my sister for me. And it practically fell in my lap. I didn't go to Boston to find my sister. I went to Boston to deal with my other issues, and I feel that these people practically just came to me, and it was meant to be. And so then they got angry with me. Well, you found your sister. So, they call me manipulative and engineering and all this stuff, and so they had contact with my sister and not with me. So, this is backfired.
You're the only one that's going to be able to acknowledge your own rights and decide, and you have to move slowly, and you have to be okay with yourself, and you have to recognize that there's risks, and you may never be 100% ready, but you may get closer to being ready to do what you feel you need to do.
Be prepared to accept any outcome.
Can you bear to have someone else treat you the way the others have treated you? And that's a tough, you have to deal with this one now, this hurt thing. What happens,
my daughter?
if he has a feeling like that, chances are, which I believe with my daughter's birth father, that his children probably think around the same way that his parents think. They're not from a very open relationship in the respect that he always says to me, "Oh, you and your husband is very open. You're very open with each other." It's that my husband knows that we communicate as friends, and we have for a very long time, but his wife doesn't even know that we even speak with one another, much less know about a child. So, how would he ever tell her this and then tell his children, because he wants his children to think he's the perfect person? He can't even deal with the fact that he didn't graduate from the school that they think he graduated from. So I told my daughter this, he can't deal with that. If that was his hand,
And also,
I don't know what you're facing.
Also, I guess this is not good advertising for the male species, but there's a real clear difference, I think, a lot of, especially teenage pregnancies and things like that, between the mother, the birth mother, and the birth father, and that the birth father's motivation may be more guided out of not wanting to inconvenience his life and his process and his getting his career and things like that going, as more of a motivation, a lot more motivated to have the child adopted out and be gone with it, done with it, allow him to get on with his life. And that seems like a lot of those messages too. My life, I've set my life, and I've kept it all secret. I've put it behind me, and it's an inconvenience, and I'd just as soon not have to get hit with that inconvenience now. It'd be just better off if it just disappeared again. And you need to look at that as more of a selfish motivation for this. And you just need to consider that in your decision about whether you need to protect him. And is he doing the right thing by protecting the rest of his family?
And then I'm afraid it'll reverberate back again, and that my birth mother will find out about it, and that she'll say, see, you did that, you weren't supposed to do that, and, you know, like, she's telling me what to do.
At the same time, you know, and I'm hearing what you're saying, and I sympathize, and I think I agree with what's been said so far, but at the same time, in myself, I'm saying you have to realize that just because this rejection took place doesn't mean that you're going to have another rejection over here, and you might end up with one wonderful relationship with one of his kids, and the rest might reject you. But there's still that possibility that you're going to have a neat relationship over here.
And there's a situation, you know, like in my birth mother's family, they already have all these other, like they're both, one's a family of 5, and this one's a family of 4. I mean, they don't need any more sisters. You know, the other one's with 1 boy and 4 girls, and then this one's 2 and 2. I mean, they don't really need me. Yeah, I need that.
We need an
It's not a need. My children did, my daughters that I raised didn't feel they needed a sister, especially my second first child. It's hard sometimes. I mean, I was very concerned with, you know, she grew up all her life that she was the oldest, she was the first, and now here all of a sudden, whew, your whole life has been a lie in a way. And I wondered how she would accept this other person, and I found that she reached out and she accepted her, and everything was, my kids are very healthy, thank God. But here, she couldn't accept them. And when I said, you know, they are your sisters, I have a sister. And here is an I mean, this just blows my mind, because yesterday one of the things that was said was separating professionalism. You have to deal with all your issues before you go on, and yet obviously she hasn't gotten any issues together, and you know, she hasn't dealt with anything. These 2 children are her sisters.
At least if you pursue, excuse me,
Okay.
my
I'm
friend
next.
here, my friend here. At least if you pursue this other family, at least you aren't working with fallacies anymore. You're working with facts. You know, and it's much easier to deal with those facts. It might hurt if you get the rejection. That's true.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't know
and
how
that's the
much
risk
more
you're
hurt I
taking.
can stand.
That's true. But at least now you know where you stand. You know the situation, and you can deal with the facts, not the fallacies.
You need to get it over with in your life, because it's eating you up, you know, wondering what to do with it. It's probably
There are
time
so
to...
many things that are eating me up. I'm not sure which is
Yeah.
the biggest bite, you know, and, you know, that's when I can leave alone because I don't know what's there. But on the other hand, yeah, you're right, that I'm a person, I want to do things. I want to finish it.
Yeah, it's never going to
You
be
know,
finished.
it's not going to be finished till I do that.
That's right.
But it sounds like also the other factor you need to take, it sounds like you haven't been legitimized. And you can only really take care of yourself. And do what you need to heal yourself to be able to go on from there. And sometimes people have to be confronted with things that make them uncomfortable. If you spend your time protecting them and sacrifice yourself in that regard, you have to live with that.
Just from everything I've heard, it seems that many of us have left the honeymoon stage of the...
There's a task-oriented person.
the timeout stage, those who have minimal contact or no contact. And I was curious, how do you make the transition between timeout and showdown? What is the minimum amount of time you should allow? Certainly every situation is different, but I've found too that there are patterns that emerge, generalities that can be made, and maybe even a rule of thumb that we can define. Discuss.
Between the timeout stage and the showdown stage, people have, the timeout stage is limbo, is what I call it. And everybody has their own tolerance for limbo. It's like being separated, between the separation and divorce. Some people can do it for 2 years, some people can do it for 2 months. A lot of what you're going to be able to deal with that is going to be inside your own self. It's going to be an intuitive process, and you know you might want to hold out for a while. If you're the birth mother and it's the adoptee that's pulled back, if you're the adoptee and it's the birth mother that's pulled back, it's scary. You need to recognize that person's asking for some space. You probably need to give that person some space. You also need to stay real tuned in to your own self and your own needs. And at some point, a confrontation needs to happen. And the person that's going to make that confrontation is going to be the person that can tolerate the limbo less. And it's going to be, there's no given point of time. There's going to be a time when I'm assuming you're the one that wants to get this connection back. And there's going to be...
It's only been 12 weeks, but, I think that's my own, correct tolerance.
I'll answer you from my own personal point of view. I'm in the timeout stage with my son, and we've been in the timeout stage since March, and I'm already pushing. Now, I'm not saying clinically that's the right thing to do. I'm saying that's my tolerance level. I'm not pushing so hard like I've got to see you tomorrow, but I'm doing things like sending him the stages and...
Not too I already decided I'm going to do that. But B is it. B is what's going on.
Exactly.
I've reached my tolerance level. That's why I'm not answering the phone, not sending cards, cutting off everything. B says it.
But you're colluding with her, and you don't want to continue to do that. You're colluding with her in helping the relationship go downhill, and you don't need to continue to do that. That's not what you're wanting.
Well, I do. That's why I'm here, so you can tell me what to do.
Send her the stages. Start pushing gently to reconnect. What can you lose?
Well, that's how I feel. Except loss of child again.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what, we're out of time. I want to end on a positive note. That's pretty hard to do. But I'll tell you something, I have to do this before I end on a positive note. Russell pointed this out to me this morning. I've never seen stuff like this before. Maybe some of you have. This is in the classified ads, adoptions.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Have you seen these?
Yeah.
Tricycles, teddy bears, tree houses. We're ready to raise a child and share our lives, hearts, and happy home. Love, dollar signs, security, stability, safe future for your newborn. Please call our attorney. And to me, what this brought back to me was when I was pregnant, social workers needed kids for adopted families, and that was all that mattered.
That's right.
And they played on the emotions of myself and my parents. And I was just told what to do when my parents were. They wanted this baby that was a commodity.
Because of abortion, they're even more of a commodity now, so it's even like,
Exactly. The only thing good now is at least we have a little information.
Yeah.
We didn't then. These stages get worse and worse.
Thank you.
But if you look at the solidifying stage, and there's no formula for this, but I've talked to people whose relationships have lasted up to 10 and 11 years now. I've talked to people whose relationships have managed to reconnect after not even speaking for 3 years. So there's still hope for everybody. The solidifying stage is kind of like the stage of mature love in a marriage, where people start making choices and people start recognizing that all this stuff is a process, and you go through all these painful emotions, and that doesn't mean you can't come out okay, and there's no promises and there's no guarantees, and I wish I could guarantee each and all of you that the solidifying stage would be the stage that you end up in. But it seems like there's not enough research yet, but it seems like the solidifying stage is a stage that does frequently take place. Even when all these other awful stages are gone through and fights occur and dropouts occur and total disconnections occur, people do seem to get back together. And if you look at this, we're talking about negotiations between people, talking about differences, talking about what's going on, talking about what issues need to be worked out, talk about how to solidify the relationship, talk about how the relationship's going to be. It might not be the way you wanted it to be. It might not be the way you dreamt it would be. but hopefully it will be some way, and it will be an ongoing relationship. That's not a guarantee, that's a hope, and it's a dream.
And just one typo, the last thing is it should be can't occur.
Yeah, can't on the last one.
Yeah. Sorry about that, typo. Thank you, you've been a wonderful group. Thank you.